Go.
Hi Joe, how are you doing?
I'm good, Jenny. How are you today?
I'm really well. Right, I'll just give it a few more seconds before we get cracking because we're now live. So, hello to everyone who's joining us. Thanks very much for coming along to this one of our first Facebook Lives. So we're bang on 6 o'clock. We've got one person watching us, which is lovely. So thank you to you. And as a couple more people join in, we'll get cracking with the kind of the chat, good and proper. Tasting okay, Joe?
Yeah. Good. Nice to visit them again. I haven't tried these for a while.
Say that.
Okay. It's all about this for a minute, isn't it? It's all about this.
It's all about Moscatel normally, but now we're going back in time, approximately kind of nearly 3 years to November 2017. Okay, so as people are joining in, we'll just get cracking on with the chat. So a quick introduction to who we are. So you've got me, I'm Jenny. I head up all the marketing and do the marketing for the Spirit of Yorkshire Distillery. And so I'll be here as a kind of questioner, judge, jury, whatever, asking questions, but also keeping Joe on the straight and narrow as we talk about Distillery Projects 001 and 002 today. We've also got Joe Clark, who's our whisky director here at the Spirit of Yorkshire Distillery. He'll be chatting all things liquid and spirit. So a quick introduction to what it is that we're doing here. So we just had a jump of lots of people joining. So hello, everyone. Quick introduction. So obviously things are totally different at the moment. So we've been working out ways in which we can welcome you to the distillery without having to welcome you physically to the distillery. So what we're going to do every Wednesday for the foreseeable future, we've got a good few weeks of content lined up. We're going to be running Facebook Lives at 6 o'clock. They'll run for about half an hour. And we're calling them Field to Bottle, mainly because each week we're going to have a different topic which covers everything generally chronologically from field to bottle. So we're starting off with Distillery Projects 001 and 002. Next week we'll focus on the farm and those kind of early elements in the farming stages of the process. So we'll be joined by Tom for that. And we'll just have kind of half an hour of chat, some tasting, some discussion. We strongly encourage and recommend and ask for any comments. So if there's anything you'd like to ask or any questions you want to know, whether it's related to the conversation or unrelated to the conversation, but not too unrelated, please, because you'll probably throw us off our chat and distract us immensely, however funny that might be. Just bob them into the comments section underneath here and they'll show up and we'll be able to talk about them. And I'll ask Joe when the time's right. So without further ado, today we're talking about all things Distillery Projects 001 and 002. So I'm going to hand you over to Joe to talk about what that actually means. What are Distillery Projects?
Sure. So yeah, these are our very earliest bottlings. This is the kind of first ever kind of thing we put out there. And obviously I've got the open bottles on this side as well. I thought these nice unopened ones so you could see them. But yeah, we kind of realized kind of early on when we opened to the public. So we opened to the public Easter 2017. And yeah, we started doing tours. So we'd have groups of kind of 10, 12, 14 people around the distillery. And yeah, you know, we were pretty brave early on. We put out 1-year-old cask samples at the end of the tour. You know, it was kind of, well, what are people going to try when they come and see us? You know, we're not a distillery that's made white spirits. I think a lot of you will be aware of that. But, you know, we don't do gin, we don't do vodka, we don't do liqueurs. So it was really what are people going to try when they come and see us? So we had 2 casks in particular that were on the warehouse floor that were tasting really good. So we kind of stuck our necks out and put them out for people to taste when they were coming around. One was cask 48, the other was a display cask, and a bit of new make spirit. And what we found really early on was people were coming to see us. They were tasting what we were making at kind of a year old, give or take, and they were really enjoying it. And you know, they were very, very, very keen to take it home with them. And at the time, all we could really say, it was myself and David doing all the calls back then, and all we could say was really, well, you know, we don't have any of this to buy, but you can buy a cask, which you still can actually. You can still buy a barrel now, but the whole kind of concept kind of grew out of that in a way. And yeah, we kind of cracked on, you know, looked at actually which of the casks are tasting really good. and what can we do with this, and what, you know, how are we going to do it? You know, how do you put out a spirit which is pre-whiskey? And yeah, we kind of got our heads together, and a kind of series of meetings, conversations later, we found the name Maturing Malt, which we all really liked. You know, I can't remember who actually came up with that first. I think we can give David credit for that. But it was a cracking. It just ticked the box. It was perfect. It just summed it up. You know, it's maturing malt spirit. So yeah, it was whiskey before it was whiskey. And yeah, we cracked on and we did our very first bottling. I remember we opened the pre-order start, I think, in November 2017, and we started getting it out of the door and shipped around December. And actually, I remember it very well because it was a weekend that we had this insane, massive storm blew over the country. It was like the worst weekend to do any shipping, and it kind of hit as we just sent this out. It was absolutely terrifying and annoying. But anyway, once it got out there and people were tasting it, it was very well received, and it's really interesting revisiting it now, I have to say.
So I'm just going to jump in there quickly and sort of take it back a bit of a step, because I think this might be interesting to a few people as well. So one of the things that I'm sure you all know about whiskey is that it can't be called whiskey until it's been in a cask for 3 years and been matured for 3 years, and that means that you really can't mention whiskey anywhere on the label for it. So whilst from a kind of customer point of view, it would have been really helpful to be able to essentially call it baby whiskey or almost their whiskey. When we spoke to the labelling regulations people, and we worked quite closely with the team at North Yorkshire County Council to make sure that we're not ever putting anything on any of our bottles that isn't quite right. Then we were kind of going back and forth about how we could do it. So you couldn't even say this spirit is on its journey to becoming whiskey or to becoming single malt. So there were quite a lot of challenges there. So maturing malt was a really useful term that we came upon because it summed it up so well without being able to use the crucial W word. The other thing that's interesting to note is that spirit has to fall into a certain category when you're selling it. So usually it's a grain spirit, or it's a something else, or it's a vodka, or it's a gin. And then within each of those categories, there's specific classifications as well. So one of the things that we spoke long and hard with the team at North Yorkshire Council, and they spoke with counterparts at other counties around the country, in other counties around the country, to sort of make sure that we were towing the line and doing the right thing. And actually it was something that had never been asked before. And I remember the team at North Yorkshire suddenly saying, right, well, we're gonna have to come back to you on that, because we need to talk to some people in Scotland. We probably need to talk to some people in Wales as well and find out exactly what they would say about it. And in the end, the decision was made that we, so on the back, I think it says maturing malt. So maturing malt spirit drink, that's it. So that's why that's on the back there. But we were able to negotiate with them that we didn't have to write spirit drink or grain spirit on the front of the bottle, because it was a proper malt and it had been made with barley using all the processes of single malt. So it wasn't any old grain or a mixture of grains, and we felt that was a really important differentiation to make on these bottles. So sorry, that's a slightly boring, more marketing, packaging, emotional.
Just brought back so many memories,
just so many calls with that and going back over it. Got some comments coming in now. So hello everyone. Thanks for the comments. Thanks Livy's dad for that too. So we'll kind of talk through, I think now we've talked about that a bit. Actually, some of the things on the names are really interesting. We wanted to create something that was interesting and collectible. Actually, we ended up making something a bit more collectible than we ever realized, because we had specific numbers per thing. And so we had people calling us every time we released a new distillery project saying, can I have number 1989 out of 2000? And then there were obviously people within the distillery as well who wanted to kind of collect specific numbers too. So we actually created something that we didn't really intend to do, which was quite nice and exciting, and a lovely sort of byproduct of it. Also, I could talk for hours about the labeling and how we decided to go with the gannet diving. We did some really exciting design work on that too, but I think that's getting carried away and we're going off topic. So rather than me telling Joe to shut up, I feel like I should be toning down and handing back over to Joe to talk a bit more about that actual spirit that's inside the bottle, because that's the most important thing, really.
Yeah, it is. It's really interesting just revisiting all that process. Yeah, it was. It was a victory not getting spirit drink on the front. I remember that very clearly.
Yeah.
So this first one, it was a combination of 5 casks that made the cut for it. So the first 4 bottles in this series, marriages of casks. So yeah, this was 3 bourbon barrels, So 2 bourbon barrels, a wine barrel, and a Oloroso orange sherry hogshead. It was of the series, it was actually the easiest one to put together because I'd been watching these particular casks for quite a long time, and in terms of kind of having a shortlist already and a good idea of what was going to form the spirit in this bottle. And there was some absolute crackers. Sorry, there was a Fino sherry hogshead in here as well. So it was 2 sherry barrels, wine barrel, and 2 bourbon. And you can see from the colour. I mean, if anybody's got any bottles of these at home, they're pretty rare now. But you see the colour was quite dark, and so these casks were super active, but they just worked really, really well together. Really, really spicy, really, really fruity, more kind of wood driven. But it's still, the smallest casks we fill are 200 litres. Again, which is unusual. A lot of distilleries, if they were going to do something young like this, would have had it in a much smaller cask because you get much more colour much quicker, that kind of thing. But as you can see, we just didn't have to do that. So it was a combination of different casks, as they all were. But this was certainly more kind of wood-driven flavours than the second one. It absolutely flew. I'm just thinking back to it, so we did that pre-order. It was about 2,000 bottles of each of these, and I think half of them were gone pretty much within kind of 3 weeks, I think, of opening it up for sale. I'd be interested to see if anybody watching has actually got a bottle of this. Has anyone commented, Jen?
One of our team members, Libby, says 001 is her favourite maturing malt, so that's good to know. Hi, Libby. And actually, no, nobody else has said anything on that, but I can say that up here at the farm, I went for a bit of a hunt round to find the right bottles to see if we had any that I could drink, and actually one of them is so close to being empty that I'll get into trouble, I think, if I take the last drops, and another one is so full that it's not been opened, so I decided I wasn't allowed to open that because that's definitely one that someone up here is saving for best. So it's interesting. I think now someone's actually asked if they can buy a cask of 001, which is a slightly different question because it's a marriage of lots of different casks, as Joe's just been saying. But it's definitely become really, like, it's not, I mean, cult is a ridiculous word to use, but it's definitely got, I'm so arrogant as well, but it's definitely got something about it that got people really excited. And to be honest, it was the hook that brought people into the distillery, because as Joe said, we don't have a gin, we've never done a vodka or anything like that. It was a really nice way within that first 3-year waiting period to give someone a taste of something, especially if they're a bit too far away, to be able to come and visit the distillery themselves. We've got a couple of people saying in, so thanks, Darren Norton. He's got a couple of 001, one nearly finished and one opened. I think that's a fairly standard practice at the moment. And somebody else saying that it's still in their cupboard. So that's good to know. But I mean, definitely worth a try. That's something that we have lots of people saying to us about, as to whether they actually do open it or whether they bought one to keep and one to drink and ended up drinking both.
Well, let me tell you, if you do decide to open it, it's tasting really good. We'd have never have put it in a bottle if we weren't really happy with it. But it's quite interesting. I think actually last time I was drinking this was the open day last year. Used it on a couple of classes back then, kind of revisiting the kind of the early days of the distillery. And it is, it's tasting really, really good right now. And I can remember spending an enormous amount of time with this, as everybody did when we released it, because it was the first spirit we put in a bottle. So it was such an exciting kind of moment for us, even getting getting the glass, getting the labels on, getting it all kind of put together. But I guess if you've got a bottle and you're not precious about kind of holding on to things for the future, then get it open. It's tasting great. I've got half a bottle here that I've had quite some time. I don't think it's going to be lasting too long after the back end of this tasting, to be honest. But really more wood driven. That was the idea with this one. So it was, again, combination of casks, and it was bringing those casks together to kind of form this kind of rounded flavor profile. Same to be said for the second, the third, and the fourth. The second one was quite a different creature altogether. It was a much kind of lighter style of the project series. The one that was always kind of closest to our kind of house style, the whiskey, the Filey Bay whiskey that we've released. It was always really, really the O2 bottling. It was certainly kind of lighter, fresher, kind of more citrusy, more kind of toffee kind of flavor profile. and you know, kind of less sherry influence basically. So this was an odd one out in a few ways, mainly because it was more distillate driven in flavors, and you know, it was actually utilizing fewer casks. So this was, you know, a combination of 5. It's a combination of 4. One of the casks in question there was a big sherry bottle. And then it was the bourbon barrels, 2 bourbon barrels, and again it was one of the wine casks. Actually, the wine casks that I've mentioned here, they run through all of these bottles. They're these kind of really amazing wine casks, which we kicked the door open to some private ownership on them over the last kind of 12 months, really off the back of just how well these first 10 performed. Built back in October 16. So the second one, lighter, much kind of lighter colour. Hold that up, have a little look at that. To the first one, so I'll just give you a bit of comparison. There we go. And just to make that out, it's a little bit tricky through that lens. But yeah, kind of lighter flavour profile. Have you got a glass of that, Jen?
Hi, sorry. Well, I've got the bottle of it. I actually haven't poured it into a glass just yet, but I was actually drinking this. Oh, hang on, I've lost Joe. Sorry, there we go. Sorry, I'm like still slightly new to this, the software that we're using for this. So this is a 002, but this one came out in spring 2018. And actually over Easter, Joe and I were talking about kind of what goes well with some of those more traditional Easter treats. And that went very well with some hot cross buns. I can say that like really complemented all of those flavors, and it came out in spring 2018, and then so actually there's quite a nice kind of springy type connection into that.
That's very much. I remember the casks were emptied. It was actually Tom and Dave who did the cask empty into this. I remember I'd shot up to a whiskey show in Glasgow that day. And I can remember Dave being on the phone going, "We're just dumping his cask. It's smelling absolutely incredible." When we were putting this batch together. But yeah, it was that time of year, and you know, we've always, you know, certainly with these earlier bottlings, kind of they were seasonal in a way. You know, that was kind of pre-Christmas, deeper, richer, spicier. Whereas this was kind of coming into a nice time of the year, brighter, lighter, and lighter flavors. We actually hot cross buns in the tasting note as well on the back. So yeah, no, very, very, very appropriate for this time of year, definitely. And it was always kind of intended to be the kind of lightest of the set. And it was hard. This was such a tough act to follow. You know, this was the kind of the tricky thing that, you know, once you're into in a set of bottles like this, actually pulling the cast together for that, I'd kind of had my idea of what that would be and how they'd come together. It's the same with this and the others, but it was that kind of little bit of concern where you come out with the next one and people would have preferred the first or whatever, and actually they were very, very different, and of course people had their favorites, but actually I think largely it was preferred, with exception to Libby, of course. Sorry, Libby. But you know, it was largely, I think, because it was just so bright and light, and you know, actually the weather was really nice that spring, as it was that summer. Actually, that summer was really hot.
The tricky second album, but actually it worked out quite well. So just Joe, you talked I'm just going to zip back a couple of sentences to what you were talking about with the wine casks. So do you just want to talk to people a bit about STR and what STR means and why they're now a bit of a staple part of our maturation process?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, we're referring with the STR is standing for shave, toast, rechar. And so they're you know, as casks go that are used in the whiskey industry, very advanced. They've basically had a reconditioning process. So the ones that we're have been filling, they've held Rioja wine for 5 years. They are then the wine is emptied out. Okay, the cask is then taken back to the cooperage that we work with. Miguel and his guys then recondition it. So they'll take the ends off the cask. They'll then shave a few millimeters off the inside of the barrel. So they're removing this layer of really, really kind of wine-soaked oak, and they're also exposing new oak by doing that. It'll then get toasted and then recharred. Okay, so it's a lengthy process, but what it does is it just kind of it means that cask at that point then is really suitable for long-term whiskey maturation. If you didn't do that piece of work in terms of the shaving, toasting, recharring, and we just filled our spirit straight into that barrel, the wine influence would really be overwhelming. It would kind of, you know, our new make spirit really kind of light, delicate, and fruity, and yeah, going straight into a cask that active with that much wine influence, it would just completely obliterate our distillery character. So, you know, they basically, yeah, they set these casks up, you know, for whiskey maturation, and a long-term maturation as well. So not just a kind of a few months or a year or whatever. So yeah, they're very advanced. They're pioneered. It's, you know, our kind of whiskey consultant early on, our chap, the guy that helped enormously in the setup of Spirit of Yorkshire, Dr. Jim Swan. So he was, you know, massively important about kind of introducing the STR casks and working, you know, to get them out there. And yeah, I think, you know, we're not the only distillery filling them, but you know, there's certainly not a huge number of them out there. And yeah, as I kind of mentioned before, we did release some for private ownership. So if anyone is interested in those, give it a shout.
Yeah.
We can make that happen. But yeah, in terms of the series of bottlings, yeah, we filled 10 of these barrels back in 2016, and one of them made it into each of these. And then if you ever wanted to taste them just kind of on its own, outright, the 005 bottling was just a single STR barrel on its own, bottled on its own. So it was only kind of 544 bottles that it yielded out of that particular barrel. So yeah, of course, since then we got such good results, and so each year we filled some more. And over the last 12 months, we've been filling them for private ownership, but also filling some for ourselves as well. So when I've talked about this before, we often then get the question, "Oh, well, can I have one from 2016?" And the answer to that is just a categorical no, because there's only 3 left from 2016. So it means, you know, wine matured Yorkshire whiskey is super rare, like really rare, and always will be. It'll always be rarer than our kind of bourbon-led style. So yeah, I hope does that sum it up, Jen? Does that help?
Yeah, that was actually very nice and concise. Well done.
Okay.
Yeah, that was interesting. I learned a couple more things there as well, which is always good to know. So I think, and if there's anything else you want to add, Joe, then we can move on to a couple of questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah.
Super. Okay, so we've got an interesting question here from Darren, which is not sure if you're planning on doing a live tasting, but keen to buy samples. So this is something over the past few weeks we have been talking about and working out logistics for, and trying to figure out how we can do it. So we're a really small team, and how we can get that out and still do it to the high quality that we'd want to do it. If you've seen our labels, you'll know that we work really hard on making those look as beautiful as possible. And so we want to make sure that if we're sending out samples, it's not just a kind of scribbled on handwritten note, and how we manage to do that and still keep it looking nice and to the right kind of standards that we expect, and that I think that sort of customers have come to expect as well. So definitely keep watching this space for something around that, and there'll be a few things coming out in the next couple of weeks. Anything else for that one, Joe?
So yes, Darren, we will hopefully be putting something out there pretty soon.
Yeah. So yeah, and as ever, an unshameless plug for our newsletter. If you're not already on it, we do really try hard to make that full of actual news and events. And our newsletter subscribers really are the first people to hear about pretty much everything that we do. That's really exciting. So all new releases go out to cask owners and newsletter subscribers first before we ever release it to the public. So for tastings and things like that, then newsletter subscribers will definitely be the first on the list to be hearing about that. So that's something to note. And then a different question was about old casks and what we do with old casks. Sorry, I'm just trying to find that now. So do we sell old casks, or are they reused? So could that create wood smoke for a barbecue smoker? Which I think is the kind of question that everyone's thinking about at the moment. As it is, you can't really see behind me. I'm up at the farm at the moment. You can't really work because of the way that the angle is, but it's absolutely stunning up here, and it's 19 degrees on the coast this weekend, which is just lovely, really nice. So yeah, barbecue's top of mind.
So to answer your question, Sean, at the moment, any casks that we empty, we're keeping hold of them. There's still loads and loads and loads of flavour in those casks, and there's loads that we can do with them. So we don't kind of have a stack of casks that are just surplus to requirement. So if we're not filling them with whiskey again, we'll be giving them to Alex, Kate up at the brewery to get some beer in them. As well is something else that we're working on. So that's so basically we're still using them to create tasty beer and whiskey. However, your idea is solid. It's a really good idea. We did a piece of work with a brilliant little smokehouse near Beverley called Style Smokehouse. Remember this, Jen? We did this for the open day.
Yeah, I had some Style Smokehouse stuff for my lunch today, and it was outrageously good.
Yeah, it's really tasty stuff. But we gave Justin some staves from a barrel, which was one of very, very few barrels that we have, which we did strip down just to staves, and gave him some of those staves, and he smoked some fish with them, and it was beautiful. If you want old barrels to strip back and use for smoking and that kind of thing, I think you're better off just kind of hopping on online. If you hit someone up like Speyside Cooperage, okay, you're going to get a lot more oak than you'd ever need for a weekend's barbecuing, but you could definitely get an old whiskey barrel and have a go, and it won't break the bank either. But yeah, that's not something we have, sadly, but it's a great idea.
It is indeed. So we got another really nice comment from Andrew Chappell, which is about 003 and 004, as well as first release, but the favourite being 004. So that leads neatly into, so next week we're going to be talking all things farm on this programme. I don't know, it feels very strange to say that on this Facebook Live this time next week. But the following week we'll be looking at Distillery Projects 003 and 004. And Distillery Project 003 was, we got a really great coup lately, which was in Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible. He gave our Distillery Project 003 95 out of 100, and the quote, which I just love, is just ridiculously beautiful, which for a not quite baby whiskey, kind of not there, shouldn't really even be referred to as whiskey, to be in the Whiskey Bible 2020 with 95 was, we were just so proud of that. So
pretty amazing. Yeah. Very happy with that.
Well done, Joe. You get good points for that one. You're welcome. So I think so I'll give a couple more seconds for any other questions, last minute questions to come in. We've had one from David, who's a good friend of the distillery, saying the Stahl gravel axe is amazing, and that is exactly what I had for my lunch today, and it was a massive treat and really good. So in a show of supporting other small local businesses who create things from a fantastic ethos, Stahl Smokehouse is definitely one to look out for. And to that end, we're going to have some stuff coming up with our sister company, World Top Brewery, who Joe mentioned earlier as well. And we're in talks with Shepherd's Purse Cheese as well to do something exciting with them over the next couple of weeks too. So just a great question from Paul Backhouse. So Paul, who's a really good friend of the distillery too, do you think that Spirit of Yorkshire will always marry their own casks, or would you think about collaborations with other English distilleries? So there's been so much chat about English distilleries at the moment, so that's a very personal question. Thank you, Paul.
That is a great question. Let's never say never. There's certainly nothing kind of concrete, and there's certainly nothing on the cards at the moment, but interestingly, what's really, really interesting on this point is, the English whiskey industry is growing, but over the distilleries that have come of age, we're all very different styles, and there's actually really across the various English whiskies, there's all the various components there to make a really, really brilliant, really well-rounded kind of tasty style of blended malt. So it's a great idea. Like I say never. But it's not something that we have planned for this year, let's say, or anything like that. But yeah, great, be brilliant to happen, I'd say.
Super. Okay, so another question here from Phil Jolly, who interestingly we have a Phil Jolly in the Mellor family, but I don't think it's the same Phil Jolly. So I've arrived late to this, but as a drinking collector, do we have some tasting notes? So Joe, do you want to just give a quick overview again for anyone who's come into this later about what 001 and 002? You've got a minute.
So. I've got 1 minute, right? Okay, so they're very
phrase, but just not too long. That's all I mean.
All right, okay, so you're not going to cut me off exactly. That's good. Good. So if you have just tuned in, so these were our two very earliest bottlings. This was released back in kind kind of winter 2017. This followed in the spring of 2018. They are long sold out. You know, we don't have any stock of these. They do exist out in the kind of the whiskey auction world. They have crept up in the past. There might be the odd retailer who's got some. If you punch it into Google, you might find them. So they are out there. You know, they're not impossible to get hold of, but they're not easy to get hold of. In terms of flavour and style, yeah, this was kind of more wood driven, more spicy. Quite happy to have a revisit on the tasting notes here. Talk about baked apple, vanilla custard, butterscotch, Battenberg cake, orange peel. Sounds great. And bang on, actually. Interesting. I can get away with that because I wrote these. And on the second one here, it was, as I mentioned earlier, it's closer to the style of whiskey that we are currently making and releasing. So this was a bit older than the first bottling, but it's still young stuff. It was still under 2 years old, and yeah, kind of lighter, more distillate-driven flavors. So for us, that's referring to a kind of cleaner, more citrus, more toffee. And we talked about hot cross buns earlier. It's that kind of thing. It's a bit more kind of bready and a bit kind of baking spice. You know, it's kind of lighter, certainly lighter than this. So great spring style dramming if you have a bottle.
Super.
Okay.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Joe.
Well, there we are.
But yeah, and we've got one last thing, which is about cheese and whiskey tasting. So that's definitely something we're looking
right.
So we really are thinking hard on that one and working out some things. So keep an eye out if you're a newsletter subscriber or newsletters, and also on our social channels for a bit more information about that. So you might just notice here that Joe's just enhanced the bottle selection on his desk.
We're talking about casks, and that's an example of what we do with empty casks.
So that is a collaboration between us and the Wold Top Brewery, who are our sister company, based up here at the farm where I am at the moment. So that is a lovely, strong, very dark, very strong beer swell, which Alex and the team here brewed specifically to go well with the whiskey casks. And it really does. So it just kind of pulls in a lot of those woody flavors, and it tastes pretty amazing. Yeah, some nice love for swell coming up on the comments there. But it is 12%, which is why it's in a 330 bottle, and we definitely advise drinking it with care because it's quite strong. It really is. But it tastes delicious. And so at the moment, there's only 6,000 bottles of that have been released. So that's selling really well. It's in a few different retailers around the county who are still able to sell, and it's also available from the Wold Top website, or if you're interested, it's available as part of our Whiskey Lovers Pack on our website if you're thinking about any presents for Father's Day coming up, or birthdays or something like that. I like that someone says, yep, swell is best to sit down whilst drinking, which I think we would very much agree with too.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. Sitting down drinking is always quite useful anyway. I think it's just a bit more comfy. Anyway, I think we'll start wrapping things up there. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined us. It's good to see there's kind of a nice high count there of people watching, and for some of the lovely comments and questions that have been coming in at the side as well. So just a quick reminder, if you've only joined in late, I'm Jenny. I head up the marketing here at Spirit of Yorkshire Distillery, and alongside me here you've got Joe Clark, who is our whiskey director. So every Wednesday we'll be back here, same time, same place, talking about slightly different things, but always connected through our field to bottle. So whether that's from the farm or stuff connected more to the distillery and the whiskey that you might have in front of you too. Last plug, which is that Moscatel and second release is still available on our website. So if you need something to keep you going through the bank holiday weekend, then head to spiritofyorkshire.com. And you'll be able to get that with the free UK mainland delivery. There we go. Beautifully done, Joe.
No problem. I've always got a bottle handy.
Excellent.
You know? Always handy.
Good to know. And there's some stuff behind me there as well if you want to have a look at what the carton looks like as well. So without further ado, I think we'll say thank you very much. And we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
Bye.